What's your damage, Heather? Whether you straightened your hair daily for years, or you have a tight ponytail problem, or maybe you went platinum blonde to find out if blondes really do have more fun, your curls have taken a beating, and it's starting to show. So what's a curly girl to do? Back to the Fit Curls Lovelies. My name is Angela, and today's video is all about dealing with damage, its causes and its solutions. So what is your damage, Heather? Let's find out. Let's talk heat damage. Heat damage is caused by, as you probably guessed, prolonged or repeated exposure of the hair cuticle to extreme heat. Now, your hair's cuticle, the outer layer of your hair shaft, is composed of proteins, primarily overlapping layers of keratin molecules. Now, when those keratin molecules are repeatedly exposed to very high heat, they start to denature, meaning that the bonds between those proteins break down, causing the cuticle of your hair to erode. In layman's terms, heat makes the outer part of your hair, the protective layer, break down. Now, those same keratin proteins can also be similarly denatured through chemical processing, leading to chemical damage. You can reach pretty critical levels of chemical damage by, say, coloring or lightening your hair with bleach, guilty party right here, or perming or permanently straightening your hair. When those keratin proteins become denatured by either heat or chemical processing, your hair's porosity increases. Just like we talked about in our last video. The higher your hair's porosity, the more your curls are gonna suffer. It's going to start to become extremely difficult to detangle or brush through your hair. Your hair becomes dry and brittle, and you may even see a loss in your curl pattern. At its worst, that hair is going to start to break off and fall out. Now, speaking of your hair snapping off, breakage can be a form of damage all on its own or a symptom of another kind of damage that's happened to your hair. Heat and chemically damaged hair is naturally more fragile, so it's more likely to break off easily. But there are certain things that you're probably doing on a daily basis that are contributing to your hair strands snapping off, even if your hair is naturally very low porosity. For example, using tight hair ties or uncoated rubber bands to create styles in your hair, slinging a bag over one shoulder and getting your hair caught underneath, dry detangling your hair or brushing out your curls while they're dry, or even something you do while you sleep. One of the most extreme forms of breakage is known as traction alopecia, which is the gradual loss of hair caused by a pulling motion on the shaft of hair. Girls with this form of damage are usually seen wearing extremely tight, slick-backed hairstyles like braids, buns, tight ponytails. These girls are gonna start to see thinning or bald spots in their hair and a receding hairline from where those same hair strands are being pulled on over and over and over again. The good news is, even if your hair is in pretty dire condition, there are certain things that you can do to improve its outlook. First off, stop bleaching your hair. I mean it, stop. If your hair is starting to snap off, it is not the time to go blonde again. Furthermore, stop heat styling your hair. Every time your curls have a bad day, put that flat iron down and figure out another solution. By eliminating or drastically reducing the frequency of chemical and heat treatments on your hair, you're going to allow it enough time to heal and determine what parts of your hair just can't be saved. In order to aid in that recovery process, see how much time you can go between washings of your hair, and even go either low or no poo for a little while, meaning eliminate sulfates. Sulfates aren't the complete enemy here, but the more that your hair has been through, the gentler you want to treat it. Now, there are some treatments that you can do at home to gradually increase the health of your hair, starting with deep conditioning. I recommend using a hair mask or a deep conditioning treatment once a week, particularly if you're washing your hair more than once a week. One of my favorite hair masks that I use weekly is the Macadamia Natural Oil Deep Repair Mask. This stuff is thick and creamy. You can see how it doesn't even move when I tip the container over. It smells fantastic, and it creates amazing slip and deep moisture in my hair. Now, if you want something a little bit more customizable, my personal favorite brand, Function of Beauty, has as one of their hair goals, deep conditioning. So even your regular conditioner, this one's mine, can have a deep conditioning function. As you can see, it's pretty thick, doesn't have a ton of movement to it, and you have the option of adding on a customizable hair mask. Again, this adds a ton of much needed moisture to your hair and helps to lock all of that into your cuticle, but it also can be customized along with the rest of your hair routine from Function of Beauty to meet your exact hair goals. Now, the next step is figuring out if your hair needs protein. Most likely, if you bleach or chemically process your hair in any way, those proteins might need a little bit of rebuilding. So if you notice that your hair, even if it's properly moisturized, is really soft and almost shapeless, it's time for a little bit of protein. I recommend using an at-home protein treatment. This is my personal favorite. It's by Shea Moisture, and it's their Manuka Honey and Yogurt Hydrate and Repair Protein Power Treatment with Mafora and Baobab Oil. Longest title ever, but this stuff is extremely helpful and helped add much needed protein to my hair after it had been processed within an inch of its life. So similar to the other hair mask, it's extremely thick, meaning it's going to be very moisturizing. It can provide really good slip, particularly if you pair it with a good conditioner. I recommend either using it as a pre-shampoo intensive treatment, so that way you can cleanse any excess out and really deeply condition afterwards, or I like to cocktail it. So I make sure I do a good deep conditioner beforehand, and then I use the protein treatment for that extra boost of protein and moisture. Now, the third step I would recommend is doing a bond building treatment. Now, a bond builder does not provide moisture or protein for your hair, but its specific purpose is to actually rebuild those bonds between the keratin molecules in your cuticle that have been denatured. Like we talked about before, heat and chemical styling actually causes those bonds to break down, and the bond builders reconfigures those proteins and helps them come back to function the way that they're supposed to and protect that inner vulnerable part of your hair shaft. Olaplex is a great thing to do at the salon, and there are certain Olaplex treatments that are only available at a salon. So the next time you go in for a trim or a color treatment, talk to your stylist about possibly adding an Olaplex treatment to your routine. There are certain solutions that you can do at home. Olaplex has some parts of their treatment regimen that can be done at home in your very own shower, but the one I use is actually by Finola. Finola has their Fiber Fix line, which is made up of a shampoo and a sealing cream or conditioner. I love these products so much. They add all that necessary protection to my hair, especially after I get it treated for my highlights, which I only do about twice a year. This is a great way to upkeep blonde, curly hair and make sure that it stays as healthy as possible, particularly between color treatments. Of course, the best defense against damage is a good offense, and there are several simple things that you can do to prevent damage from happening to your hair in the first place. Now, talking about heat damage, there are two things that I highly recommend. Number one, if you plan on heat styling, whether that be blow drying or straightening your hair, use a really good heat protectant. That's going to protect all of that moisture and those proteins in your hair shaft and keep them from denaturing. Now, if you use silicones, just make sure that you cleanse your hair thoroughly with a clarifying or a sulfate-based shampoo to keep any of those silicones from building up on your hair shaft, and then give it some much needed moisture afterwards. The other thing that I recommend is making sure that you don't use heat tools, especially a blow dryer, on soaking wet hair. Now, a lot of us, when we style our curls before diffusing, we're wet styling. our hair is extremely saturated with water and then with product. But before you ever reach for that hair dryer, make sure that you squeeze the excess moisture out of your hair, or even plop or micro plop your hair. Otherwise, you can just use your hands, cup your hair very gently, and just squeeze to make sure all of that excess moisture comes out. That way, not only will your drying time be a lot shorter, but the hair is not going to be so saturated with moisture when heat is applied to it that it's going to start to boil and then explode like popcorn through your hair shaft. When it comes to chemical damage, the simplest option is just to not chemically treat your hair. But I'm a total hypocrite when it comes to that. I do get highlights done in my hair about 2 to 3 times a year with a chemical lightener, what most people would consider bleach. But I go to an expert colorist who gets her own hair blonded and is used to every hair type, so she knows how to use those bond building treatments as part of my regimen to keep it as healthy as possible. So make sure you have a colorist who's used to dealing with curly hair and is going to take all the necessary steps to prevent as much damage as possible. The other thing that you can do is just reduce the frequency of the number of times a year that you get your hair lightened. Or you can get it lifted with permanent color instead of with bleach. There are still ingredients in permanent hair color, even salon hair color, that lift your hair and can cause damage to that cuticle, but it's less damaging than going in with a really high developer and a strong lightener. Obviously, the most common form of damage that pretty much all of us have is breakage, and there are some pretty simple ways to make sure that we avoid or prevent that as much as possible. First off, stop scraping your hair back into super tight hairstyles. If you still need a slick back bun or a nice high top knot every so often, great, but alternate it with a looser hairstyle. If you're braiding your hair, take bigger sections and pull a little bit less. And if you're pulling your hair back into a ponytail, try a gentler hair accessory, such as a scrunchie, or my personal favorite, an Invisibobble. This sucker is actually going to hook into your curls. So when you use your Invisibobble to style your hair, you probably will only have to loop it around the strands of your hair once or twice. For example, that was one loop around and my hair is staying put. Using something like an Invisibobble, because of its unique design, is going to lock into my curls, and when I take it down, it's not stretched out or flattened, which is a nice perk. Now, I also recommend wet detangling. Purchase a really good wet brush. I'll link a couple of options below, some of my favorites, and detangle your hair while you're in the shower and using conditioner. That conditioner is going to create slip or a lack of friction in your hair so that the brush can glide through as easily as possible. If you encounter knots, go a little bit below where you find the knot in your hair and start to take little scooping motions with the brush to avoid taking those knotted strands of hair and just yanking them out of your scalp. Now, one of the most crucial times to protect your hair is overnight. Sleeping on a cotton pillowcase or leaving your hair unprotected overnight can cause a lot of friction, especially if you're an active sleeper like I am, and that's going to lead to breakage and damage to your curls, as well as keep your style from lasting for multiple days after your wash. So for that, I recommend 2 solutions. Number 1 is using a satin bonnet. Not everybody necessarily finds these attractive, but this has made all the difference when it comes to protecting my hair and my style for days on end after my wash. Now you can see it's made out of a very soft, slippery material. Satin, or silk if you want to be a little bit more bougie with it, does not create any friction and also doesn't absorb moisture. So the moisture stays put in your curls where it belongs, and your hair doesn't get rubbed back and forth on a catchy substance, so it won't create any frizz or breakage. You can also take an extra measure of security even if you do use the bonnet, by using a silk pillowcase. My husband got me this one for Christmas, and it's the softest thing I have ever had in my entire life, and I love it. So, silk and satin have the same benefits, it's just a slightly different price point. But if you're looking for satin, not all polyester satin is created equal. You'll find it at a much lower price point, but make sure that if you're buying satin, you look for satin charmeuse. That is going to be the finest fibers and the slipperiest version of satin there is, which is the least likely to create any friction and therefore breakage. Bonus, it's also really good for your skin, so it prevents things like breakouts or wrinkles. And if you're a hot sleeper, silk stays cool all night. So it's like you permanently have your face on the cool side of the pillow. Ugh, heaven. It's just heaven. Sometimes when your hair has gotten to the most dire point, if you have reached somewhere between a grade 4 and 5 in your porosity, if your hair feels gummy, if a certain part of your hair won't curl again at all, especially the ends, you see those long straight portions of hair where it won't curl at all, your hair won't dry, it won't style, and it feels like all of a sudden the second that you touch it, it just snaps off in your hands. There's only one solution for that, and that's a haircut. If you've hit a grade 4 or 5 porosity in your hair, chances are it's time for a haircut. You can either go for a big chop, just get rid of all of that damage all at once, or you can talk to a curly hair stylist about transitioning a little bit more smoothly. Now, part of that is going for regular trims. Especially if you have layers, you're gonna need to renew that shape of your hair on a pretty regular basis, anywhere from every 6 weeks to every 6 months. Talk to your stylist about the best solution for you. If you find a really good curly hair specialist, they're gonna be able to help you through this transition and increase your self-esteem as your head of curls gets more and more damage-free. All right, that is all for today, everybody. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you learned something. And if you have any further questions or comments, anything you need to share with me about today's video, drop it in the comments down below. Before you go, make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. The more watches and shares we have on this channel, the easier it will be for our content to find the people who need it. And don't forget to subscribe before you go and hit that little notification bell so that way every time we upload a new video, it goes straight to you. My name is Angela. Thank you guys so much for watching The Fit Curls, and we'll see you next time. Bye! And action. All right, calling. Let's start without the all right, and we'll get it. We're live! We're live! I'm convincing myself that we're live. I'm gonna keep that. Keeping it. Gradual hair loss caused by a extreme pulling force. Extreme pulling force? Grammar! Why do I keep saying things like that? So close! Or if you just want